Hi, so I wasn't planning on going live, but just a lot of thoughts just percolated up. And having read out of chapter 4, the first hub chapter yesterday, maybe that is what evoked these thoughts. Because as I may have mentioned, and I think I have mentioned in previous read alongs, is that this book wasn't written chronologically as it is found on the page. And so, um, the first chapter that was written is chapter 4, which is the chapter we're in. So for me to be rereading it right now off a page, like I spent a lot of time editing. I spent, a lot of time in this book, but as a digital file, reading it off the page is especially this first this first beginning of the entire process, I guess, is kind of bringing back some memories. And so, most importantly, the thing that tipped off that I wanted to do like a live read along was that just thinking about how our beliefs and feelings are set as like before we have a say in the matter, and they really shape their entire experience of our lives. They shape what we think is reality, and they shape how it feels to be alive, which actually informs those beliefs and actually reinforces them. And, and the thing is, I was thinking about it this morning. This is the first time I'd ever thought this, which is that, you know, like one of the things that I used to get like kind of, stuck on is like, well, we didn't have say in it. We didn't have a say on it in it. Um, but like if you consider that we had no context, so what could we have said? As far as if we did have a role in shaping, our beliefs and how it feels to be alive, how could we have done that with no previous information? So that information that has shaped and has informed the experience of being alive is the context, and the work that we're doing right now is the having the say in shaping it. And so, with that being said, I had this memory. So in the very early days of writing this book, I had this dream, and this was before it was like when the process was coming into sort of like, sort of landing, which I talked about. And I'm happy to talk about more, but for the purposes of today, I had this dream. And in the dream, I don't remember it fully because I did write about it because it was like so it just was so powerful to me, was that someone had stolen my backpack and run into a subway. And somehow in the dream, and I mean, this might be a little distorted, is that like when I got the backpack back, there was a notebook in it. And I recognized the notebook because it was a notebook that I actually had in real life. And when I woke up, because at the time I was in Rhode Island, with my partner at the time, and the notebook I knew was either like here at my home in Boston or at my home up in Salem. And so I remember just the whole morning being like, what's in that notebook? What's in the notebook? And funny enough is like, like some time passed, I finally get to the notebook, and this is it. You can see it's like weather beaten. It's like about 15 years old now. Um, Previously like quite cute, but it's a little blank. And so so this doesn't have a date on it, but it was very likely 2009 that I wrote this. And so so the point that I'm making, and I'm going to read a little bit out of the book as it relates to this, is that the beliefs and feelings shaping the sense of like this is what reality is becomes like in and of itself, that sense of it being the initial context becomes this immovable object, that is actually not a load-bearing wall. That's what we do here in Parinama. But so I wanted to read this first paragraph because when I did find this, like my jaw dropped because I was reading it probably 10 years after I'd written it at the time, maybe like somewhere around there. But bloop. It's hard to write about this. I have anxiety about security. There is no way to feel secure, truly. Life is uncertain, and I'm obsessively concerned with how long my savings can sustain me if I lose my job. With shopping, the more things I own, the more anchored I felt in the world. I don't know if food is getting me this sense of security. When I try to scrutinize the emotional experience, it vanishes or visibility gets further away. I mean, and then I go on to talk about, honestly, like things that are all very first hub, things about work, but I think the most, and so the important point to me is this absolutely does not represent how I feel anymore. It's not my reality. At the time, the conviction I had that I knew that this is how the world works, this is what it means to be alive, is not that that's 100% eradicated, where it's like, because the world is a shifting, changing place, but that seeing that as being sinister and at risk and everything's about to like fall away and sort of a impending catastrophe. Certainly I think, as it relates to Parinama method is like, I guess maybe like the potential for anyone about the fact that these are things that are um, changeable. So, I mean, I won't get that far into this. I just felt like that like really arose as like a recollection about the early days. And the thing that was also interesting is like years later, maybe a year or two later, when I was researching and reading a lot of Carl Jung, there's one in his like biography, um, or autobiography, I don't remember which one it is, like you call it, it's just more like, is that he wrote about having this dream, where he went into a basement and like, and it's been a while since I've read it, but it was his dream that he went into this basement and he was like working with like deeper concepts. And when he went to his teacher and mentor at the time, Freud turned it into this thing that was like about his like mother-in-law and like about women, and he writes about how that was when he knew that Freud would no longer be able to be capable of teaching him, because he knew that those deeper um like those deeper callings were about potentially, the things that led to like sort of collective unconscious and things that have to do with like the deeperness, like, as I'd consider to be represented in the soma, and like kind of like the things we've inherited like within ourselves. And look, I could certainly imagine that this is like a point of, like inherited belief systems potentially, but what I do know is that they were the belief systems that I carried with me, and the Parinama method represents the methodology and the work to actually transform that. So I want to read a little bit of this, in because I think it kind of works in concert with this, specifically starting with like, just for time, I'm going to probably go backwards. And the next time I do a reading, I'll do food, rest, and work, because work actually kind of dovetails into this, but just for the interest of time and the fact that I hadn't planned on doing this, and is, yeah, that's what I'm going to do it. So it's on page 62. So money and prosperity, experiencing insecurity with basic needs, especially early in life, can have a lasting effect that complicates our relationship with money. Early insecurity can lead to holding patterns such as hoarding or dissociative spending, which create debt and so put financial security at risk. Since the pulse of this hub beats below the surface of our conscious mind, no amount of wealth consciousness will override disrupted and interrupted security programming. A relationship with money gets stored in our bones and tissues. Sometimes it reaches back into our ancestry. Long after the Great Depression, many who survived were still fearful and retained hoarding habits. Children of survivors born decades later were affected by the intensity and severity of the lasting trauma they witnessed in their parents and grandparents. Money empowers our efforts and expresses our values, whatever they may be. Money is an amplifier. Consider it neutral potential energy that's neither good nor bad until it gets turned into action through spending. When we have it, some of our true nature is revealed. If we're miserly, petty, or cruel, our money will amplify our ability to express these qualities. If we're generous, creative, and kind, these qualities also become magnified through the power of money. How we spend money is individual and an expression of what we value. It is beyond the Parinama method's scope to discuss healing a money relationship, and unnecessary because there's so many excellent books on the topic. Yeah, as a side note, I will say that a part of my own process was doing a lot of work in this space. I became really interested in money. Um, and I read a lot. If you're interested in book suggestions, please drop a comment, and I will add some in. And there's right now there's a lot of like increased consciousness and folks who are writing on the topic in ever increasing levels of practicality, and also digging into like a lot like aspects of it that that are fantastic, I think, for this reconciliation, because it's so important. But anyway, I'll dip back into reading this. So physical possessions are in the domain of that have hub, but they cross over into the second hub when we become emotionally attached to them. Young children often form an attachment to a toy or blanket, what psychologists call a transitional object, that they rely on while they navigate transitions into independence and autonomy. The consistency of a physical object supports confidence as they make their way during the separation from the merged state with a mother or primary caregiver. This is common, as reports show 2 out of 3 children who attend nursery school have a transition object. If a transition to secure emotional attachment with people isn't made, as adults, we may find ourselves with strong material attachments. If we tend to personify and feel a connection to our possessions, this can interfere with our ability to let go of things when we need to release them. An inability to part with items affects first hub holding patterns, specifically the inflated adaptation of hoarding. Yeah, so as an addition to that, one of the things about like holding on to things, as gets like further explored here, is it like blocks out the possibility for new things to come in. So like in the depths of this is really holds deeper implications. So like where security as a first hub matter, how that has a ripple effect into all aspects of our life, in ways both like small and large. So I'll dip back into reading. Prosperity and manifestation require repetitive, mundane work. Although we can experience a flow state and periods of ease and creation, a paradox exists because we need to show up for the work every day. This is a paradoxical, complementary opposite. Both things seemingly conflict while simultaneously being true. It's an appealing idea that if we're excited enough about something and that it seems meant to be, it will be effortless to attain. But to make something happen, we need to spend time with it. Although the initial attraction can be effortless, there will be work to do. I discuss discipline and action further in the third hub, see chapter 6. And even go deeper into activating the top-down current of creation in part 3 of the Parinama method. For now, I underscore the reality that succeeding in any venture requires mundane repetition that persists through challenges, delusionment, and failure. Showing up every day is how we transform an idea into a physical reality as an expression of love and intention. Every hub plays a role, and the first hub is the practical reality of the importance of consistency. Boundary and containment are essential themes in this hub because having something requires holding it and keeping it. What we create in the higher hubs will slip through our fingers if we cannot maintain and contain with a solid first hub boundary. Professor and mythologist of human experience, Joseph Campbell, told us to follow our bliss and describe the hero's journey. It starts with a call to adventure and is followed by a departure from the life that the hero has previously known. Next come trials, tribulations, and an abyss. Later, Last, the hero, if persistent, returns to society with the treasures gained from the journey. See chapter 9. Understandably, we prefer the call to adventure and the return to glory parts. The trials, tribulations, and abyss are less popular, which is a shame because they are where the profound transformation happens. And we may like to imagine mythical, action packed battles with dragons, but the trials, tribulations, and abyss are the lonely, isolating inner struggles with ourselves as we work past insecurities, limits, and fears through long hours, days, and years of devoted discipline. It's hard. Manifesting takes work. In a twist of New Age irony, manifestation requires limitation and consistency, as we must choose one course of action over all others. The process of bringing a dream into reality means focusing on something to the exclusion of other activities. Manifestation is about being grounded through this limitation. Judith speaks of the unrealistic attachment to freedom in the yoga and New Age spiritual community. We paradoxically break through limits and experience greater freedom through growth by practicing restraint and discipline. Developing any kind of fitness or education requires showing up consistently for what really matters. See chapters 6 and 7. It's an expression of love. It is. So, yeah, yeah, it's really interesting to read that because it goes in a different direction than I was kind of honestly like remembering and expecting it to. But it's so important actually as it wraps back into when we're talking about this like initial shift in my own perception is, as an example of, and it's like, how was that achieved? And, I think one of the key components of that was consistency, and it was applying devotion and discipline to practices. One of those practices being my yoga practice, and specifically the experience of learning that I would show up whether I felt good or bad. And that even, in a, Ashtanga practice, you're doing the same practice every day, but it's different every day. And seeing that there's time, and like being able to um experience that every day is going to have like in the same body, in the same life, is going to just have vicissitudes. But anyway, to go back full circle, I think the key message that I want to portray here for this is that, beliefs and feelings, especially fear about security, and even what we believe to be absolutely true about what it means to be alive, how it feels to be alive, and belief systems that that these are the context that we sprung from, that we grew from, and that now we're in a position to be able to have a role in shaping how it feels to be alive and how it feels to experience life. And I think that's all I've got for today. But thank you as always for coming along for the ride. It's a pleasure to share this with you. It's a pleasure to have it arise and have the idea that I can kind of transmit this out into the world. And again, Mira, of course, like, so much love to you. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. It means a lot to me. It feels like more of a discussion. I really welcome when the time will come that there'll be more forums like that. But anyhow, please like the video. It really encourages me, and comments if you're interested in some suggestions for reading. I had somebody ask me yesterday. They said, I'm finishing the book right now, and I'd like a reading list to continue this work. So that's also something I think that'd be kind of like, that seems like that makes sense to do. Because even similar to talking about the Carl Jung book, that was like, that just some of the books that went into writing this. I wouldn't actually probably put that one as like canon, but there are certainly a lot of books that like support this process, because there's a lot of books that are what's it called, considered and input in this in Parinama method. So anyway, thank you so much. I can't wait to see you next time. Bye.